understand this. Everything is moving in the direction that the Bible says it's moving in. Jesus is coming, and we've got a lot to be excited about.
There's going to come a time of reckoning, and that reckoning is coming soon.
Hello, my dear brothers and sisters. We want to welcome you to another episode of Countdown to Eternity. As you are already aware, the great Don Stewart is at home recovering. He is doing well. Continue to pray for him. Of course, we would encourage you to support him at educatingourworld.com. But in the meantime, I have got one of my best friends in the whole world, Tom Hughes. He is the pastor of 412 Church in San Jacinto, and in my opinion, one of the premier Bible prophecy guys. And Tom, we got a lot to talk about, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have a whole lot to talk about. And I don't know how much time we have, but I tell you what, I think we should be talking a little bit about the G7. I want to ask you, did you hear that Joe Biden blamed the tornadoes in Kentucky on global warming?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, there you go.
No, I did.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more here that I want to talk about, but this is just a couple of the things. So I say, whenever you're ready, let's go.
Well, let's jump into the G7, shall we?
Okay.
I think the article that you are talking about is what? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah. So the article I'm talking about, this one comes from Newsmax. G7 warns Russia of massive consequences if the Ukraine is attacked. And James, I will say this, you spark a lot of interest in viewers, and they email me and they say, what did James mean by this? And what did James mean by that? So half my answers are, why don't you ask James instead of asking me what he means? but one of the things that's happened is because of the G7 and what's going on with Ukraine. There you go. I have people asking me, several people now have asked, hey, is the G7 the seven horns of Daniel? And then it starts getting people into this different speculation. But the reality of it is what's happening in Ukraine is a big deal. And we're watching some very interesting things form. And right now we have a world that is definitely destabilized. We have, I believe, Antichrist is on the horizon, whoever that is. I don't know. I don't want to speculate who he is, but because that leads to just more emails that I'm going to have to just go through. But regarding the G7, James, this is fascinating. This whole thing is absolutely fascinating. So, I'm interested in your thoughts because there's a paragraph in this particular article. It says the G7 comprises Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, and the United States. That's 7, as well as a representative from the European Union.
Bingo! I did a video on this earlier this week where I talked about this, and a lot of people will look at this video and or look at this article and they'll make a big deal of the heading in this article, because the heading of this article, or the title of this article, is G7 warns Russia of, quote, massive consequences if Ukraine is attacked. And I think, wow, that looks like a big headline. It could be potentially a serious thing. But like you said, why don't we read the list of countries that are in the G7? And you would think, okay, well, this is most definitely an empty threat. We're talking about Britain. We're talking about France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, and the United States. Well, we know the United States won't do anything. Certainly Canada won't do anything. Italy definitely won't. Germany won't. Britain won't. France most definitely won't. Japan may, but they're going to be too busy focusing on China when everything goes down with Taiwan. So I'm not really looking at that and going, oh, well, this is a big deal. And, we really need to be worried about this. I mean, Ukraine is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But it's a big deal for other reasons. But this article was a big deal to me because of that very line that you actually read. I made a big old deal about it because, like you said, they named the G7, all the 7 countries, right? They named Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Canada, Japan, the United States. But who don't they mention? The European Union, folks, that is not a member of the G7, but they still had a representative of the EU right there. Now, the reason why that's a big deal to me is because we are already watching one of the biggest controllers in the EU, right? We're looking at Germany, who their new political parties and the formation of their political parties, they're actually saying we want to start a super state, right? They want to call it the United States of Europe, and they want to be the first super state. So they want to basically take several of the nations that exist within the EU, consolidate them into one United State, basically, and begin to do what I would consider to be a revived Roman Empire, or the beginning of a revived Roman Empire. That's what we're looking at right now.
We are. James, I have no doubt we are looking at what I would call the birth of the New World Order, and it is Europe. We've talked about this many times. These globalists are primarily rising out of Europe. That's where they are. Because if you were to take China, you were to take Africa, you take Russia, parts of Africa, you take Russia, you take pretty much any Muslim territory, they have their own leaders. What's happening in Europe is, and it's been going on for over a century, they've been globalists. It's been a long time. And it hasn't been just about this person rising up out of a country in Europe, or this person rising out of a country in Europe. You had Hitler, you had Mussolini, you had those, but we've watched a good century. It's the entire European super state that they've been wanting to develop. And it's Europe that is really, James, when you look at what's happening in the United States, I believe it's the globalists that are controlling what's really going on in Washington that are coming out of Europe. England's never been thrilled about the fact that the United States of America, they lost their hand in them many years ago, many decades ago. And so you look at that, 1776, you go back to this in the beginning of America. But it's these globalists out of Europe. So you have the European superstate, yet they're also saying they want to have their own military. Why? Because they know they can't trust the U.S. anymore, can't count on them anymore. But they're talking about it. And then you have what's going on with other things regarding restrictions and so forth, and making sure people are properly identified. This is all primarily being driven by Europe. So when you look at other countries and what they are doing with some of the rules and regulations, these things seem to me to be dictated from Europe, not even from America.
100%. You're absolutely right. And these are things that we should be focusing on, because the Bible tells us that we are going to see these certain things happening in the last days. And what we are watching right now is the correct geopolitical shifting in order to match up the events that we know are going to happen just prior to the tribulation, or during the tribulation for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at this with the G7, I want to ask you this. So we got that European superstate. It is developing. It's developing rapidly. When you look at Ukraine, we see what Russia is threatening. Russia's got trouble.
Oh, yeah.
China has trouble. These are two nations that have themselves, they're not in great positions. So because they're not in great positions, they're going to do something. Now, I think Russia has more leverage than China does in regards to, obviously, Russia has some leverage in dealing with Europe. I mean, you have the whole Nord 2, I think is what that gas line is. So you have that. Europe is in a bind with Russia, but still, neither one of those countries are in a great position.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, bro.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So if you're a leader of a country and you're looking, what are my options? And you start thinking militarily, I have certain options. Now, Russia has another problem because of the borders, the on all their different sides, north, south, east, and west, they have trouble. They have to constantly watch themselves. And that's another reason why they want to expand into Ukraine. I mean, there's various reasons. Ukraine is I believe is advantageous for them.
Oh, 100%. And it's primarily advantageous because of their positioning with respect to everything that's around them. Understand that the Ukraine also, I keep saying the Ukraine. You want to know why people don't like it when you say the Ukraine if they're from Ukraine? It's because, and I just found this out, it's because Ukraine actually means borderlands, basically. So when Ukraine was a member of the USSR, when it was part of the Soviet
Uh,
Union, it was referred to as the borderland of Russia, right? So anytime you say the Ukraine, you are referring to it as though it's still a member of the USSR, which is why people from Ukraine don't like that statement.
that is good to know. That makes a
That's
lot of
very
sense why they don't. Yeah.
that's how you can very easily offend
Huh.
anybody who's not a sympathizer towards Russia, who's from Ukraine. That's
Yeah.
exactly why that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Well,
found that out
there you
recently,
go.
by the way.
Yeah. That is interesting. So, when we look at the world stage right now, you got crises China, crises Ukraine, crises with America. We have crises with the collapsing economic position of most countries on the entire planet.
That's
We
right.
look at crises with Israel, with Iran. I mean, you look anywhere you look, we're on the verge of absolute catastrophe.
100%.
What do you
Yep.
think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? Somebody's going to have to come along and fix this mess.
Yeah, well, that somebody's gonna end up being the final Antichrist. I mean
He's going to.
I
He
mean,
will have
we
the plan.
Oh yeah, he's going to have the plan. I mean, and remember when we talked about that speech that the great Prince of Wales actually gave, and we'll spend some time talking about it a little bit more. He's basically saying the world economy is not enough money to solve the problem that we are facing right now. He says the world's governments does not have the combined total of the world's governments does not have the wisdom necessary to fix what is going on. He says it must be trillions of dollars beyond the world GDP at the disposal of a single person that he doesn't name.
But he seems to say there is somebody here
Who can fix it? Yep,
who already exists, who
right. Who's
has
beyond the world's governments.
who's beyond the world governments, all of them, and his wealth is beyond the world's GDP.
That's right.
You know,
That's
you
right.
think
Which implies a cashless society.
it implies a cashless society.
And what does Revelation chapter 13 tell us? You're not going to be able to buy or sell unless you have that mark on your forehead and your right hand. And you're not going to be able to buy or sell or be restricted to buy or sell unless you are dealing with a cashless society that the government can control or that dictator can control, who is named the final Antichrist.
I would love to, let's say, just talk a little, expand on this a little bit more, because there's a lot of interesting things in what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, sure there is. I mean, look. The bottom line is I think that if I were to put like a timeline on things and I were to talk about how things are going to go, I think Russia or Gog, the leader of Russia, in essence, goes and attacks this whole area of Israel, as the Bible says is going to happen in Ezekiel 38-39. I think it's going to happen after the rapture. I know it's going to happen after the rapture because God states in Ezekiel chapter 39 that this is him dealing directly with his ancestrally chosen people. So we know that it's him dealing with Israel. The dispensation to deal with Israel is after the rapture, when the church age has been completely wrapped up. I think what will happen is Israel is going to get attacked. At that point, they're going to recognize how absolutely helpless they are, and God is going to intervene miraculously in one way or another, which, by the way, is not the first time that God has intervened on behalf of the Israelis in a modern warfare situation. Perhaps the Yom Kippur war that they call it, right, was perhaps one of the greatest symbols of God's miraculous hand in sparing the Jews and giving them victory. So this isn't going to be an unusual concept of God getting in the way or God standing in the way and protecting Israel, but there's going to be a lot of fallout. We know that there's going to be weapons burning. We know there's going to be nothing but complete chaos and destruction going on. We know that literally the Middle East is going to be destabilized in ways we never thought it would be destabilized. And I assume that the EU is going to recognize all of this, say, look, we've got a mess on our hands, but there are actual interests involved that belong to us, whether they be gas pipelines, whether they be natural resources like the oil available to us in Israel, whether it be the gold and silver that Russia wanted but was never able to get because it wasn't successful in attacking Israel. And they're going to end up saying this is far beyond anything that we can manage. We have a global crisis. We have a crisis that relates to climate change. We have a crisis that relates to a health problem. I mean, the totality of all of it is going to make all of these world leaders saying we need to relinquish to one person that we know can solve this problem. And of course, the company speech is going to be the same as it always has been. It will only be for a short time, which of course, yeah, theoretically, it'll be for a short time because the Lord's going to put an end to it very quickly, but he's going to take control. When he does, for that first 3.5 years, people are going to be blown away because of the treaty that he actually made strong. You're going to look at him, they're going to say he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Even the Jews are going to worship him as the Messiah, which, by the way, let me go back and make this one statement. We know that this will all happen after the rapture because we know that the Antichrist can't even be revealed to the rest of the world until the actual rapture has taken place. And we know that the very first seal that we read about in the book of Revelation won't even happen during the tribulation. It happens before the tribulation because that seal itself speaks of the revealing of the Antichrist, and we know that the tribulation can't start until the Antichrist himself does what he's going to do in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, which is the commencement of the 70th week of Daniel, which of course is the commencement of the tribulation, where he basically makes that covenant strong. And then after that, what he ends up doing, which is unbelievable, is he sets himself up in the temple. He demands to be worshiped. That's when the Jews are going to see that they've made a mistake. They're going to turn their hearts to the true and living God. And this Antichrist is going to lose his mind. And it's going to be a crazy scene.
So I got to ask you a question because I get this a lot. People have said to me, well, the Jews are going to receive him as Antichrist, therefore he'll have to be Jewish. Okay, that's one question. The other one I have is this. I'm not so sure that in general the Jews are going to receive Antichrist as the Messiah, because it's when he claims to be God that they're woken up to, oh no, you're not God. You're not the Messiah.
Yeah,
right?
I think the political movement within the Jewish population that receives him is going to be the one that receives him.
Okay, that clarifies a lot. And that's my thought also, because when Jesus says, when he's talking to the Pharisees, he says, there's one coming, him you will receive. Well, and so I've also equated that, okay, there's going to be a class of people in Israel, a class of Israelis and Jews that will receive him, but there's going to be many people that are going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm holding out, let me see. The moment he sits in the temple, says, I'm God, they're going, you are not. And that's at the time of the abomination of desolation too, which exactly what the abomination of desolation is, we don't know for sure. We know what Antiochus Epiphanes did, but we don't know exactly what Antichrist is going to do at that place. It may be that he goes into the Holy of Holies and claims I'm God, and that's could be what it is.
I mean, it could be something very, very similar, but yeah, we are talking about the ruling class here. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, that was great. By the way, I got many people who complimented you on your explanation of how the end times events are going to unfold from our last Friday post on Tom and James. And also, you have something similar on our Tuesday live that we did last week on your channel.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
people loved how you had explained how the events are going to be unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very interesting, right? I mean, we're watching things change so dramatically and so radically that I mean, it's the truth of the Bible, the reality of what the Bible says is going to happen is becoming more and more obvious, right? It doesn't take a lot to connect those dots. And I think that's why those things can be so easily explained, because as long as you're looking at what the scriptures teach about those things, it's easy to put the dots together.
Yeah, definitely. So you have even in Psalm 119, your word is a light unto my path. His word will be a light into a very dark world. Is another place where it's actually a description of Bible prophecy itself. Prophecy sheds light into a dark world. We live in a dark world. When we understand the Bible and Bible prophecy, we can see things. I'm going to throw something else out to you. This is from the Sydney Morning Herald. Facial recognition to track cases as infections soar in South Korea. So we're watching that take place also.
Oh yeah,
You talked about going cashless. You talked about Prince of Wales, what he said in the speech, which we'll cover in more detail another time.
right.
And you've already done some. But now, so we're watching this facial recognition. This is another thing that should not come as a surprise to anybody that is looking at the Bible, trying to say, okay, let me have a light. Let me understand what's happening. This word, this thing right here, this book, shouldn't call it a thing. This book is that light that sheds
Yeah.
light to
Amen.
understand this. So when we see something like this in South Korea, James, it's the same thought process. It helps us to understand the times that we live in. If
Oh,
anybody can look at these things and say, well, we're not heading there, this is all just a big coincidence that all of these things are shaping up right now.
oh yeah.
Uh, I'm thinking, how could you possibly believe that? How can you think? Yeah, I better be careful here.
No, no,
So,
listen, I'm
yeah,
with you on this. I'm with you. I mean, look at this article. This article just makes me laugh. I'm staring at this article. This article says Russian jets escort NATO aircraft away from border for second time in 2 days. I mean, think about the significance of something like that. I mean, in the world in which we're living today, who ever thought that they would see anything like this happen? I mean,
yeah,
who ever thought? I mean, it's unbelievable to me, but that's what's going on. Russia is increasing in their stand concerning what's going on with Ukraine. This is setting up the groundwork for what we know is going to happen in Ezekiel chapter 38. We know
yeah.
that.
Oh, it is. Well, I'll tell you what else is happening, James. You and I have talked about it a few times, and I think you're starting to win some people over to our side of
Oh,
the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, I think we're
because
beginning to see it. Yeah.
we are, because I mean, people are starting to think. I mean, we still get pushback, but the reality of it is everything you described in all of the catastrophes worldwide that are shaping up, in whether it be Ukraine or all the things that we've talked about, Israel, um, the things going on in South Korea, all these different things, what Prince of Wales said, they all fit perfectly with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, where
Oh
we
yeah.
have it describes, by the time you get to the fourth horseman, a world that has gone through catastrophic events, including war, economic collapse, famine, um, rules and regulations that are conquering and crushing people, keeping them in check, and then, of course, pestilences, plural. Gone through
Yeah.
all these catastrophic things. Out of that rises this man that, I don't know, whoever it is. Um, is it the guy that Prince of Wales is referring to? I don't know, but this is all coming, and
Oh yeah.
we are witnessing it, and we
Yep.
need to be prepared. I had a question just the other day. I guest spoke at another church, as you know, James, and the question was regarding what are we supposed to do right now? Because this person watches you and I. And I said, well, you're supposed to, you need to use wisdom and understand the rapture will take place, but we don't know when. So use wisdom, because we can all see what these people are telling us they're going to do to us.
Right.
And we can read about the economy, we read about inflation, it's only skyrocketing. So what should you do? Use wisdom, and then you need to press forward
You know,
accordingly.
You know, it's really funny. We are completely out of time, and you gave the best ending that we can have for this show. And that what is, what can we do? And that is literally seek the Lord, use wisdom, as the scriptures would say. I can't believe we are out of time. I could not end a better way than by you giving the counsel that you just gave, right? We need to seek God. We need to put him first. We need to look to him, and just understand, folks, Jesus is coming soon, and we are running out of time. Please don't forget that. So, on behalf of the great Tom Hughes, I almost said Don Stewart because it's so habitually. Of course, I will say on his behalf as well. He believes the same thing. We really hope that you enjoyed watching this as much as we've enjoyed making it. May God richly bless you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Countdown to Eternity. And just know this: Jesus is coming soon. We love you. Keep your eyes on him. Look to him. Don't forget, he's right around the corner. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us, but don't click away just yet. If you want to catch previous episodes, you can find them on countdown2eternity.com or listen on your favorite podcast app. Visit educatingourworld.com for additional resources that Pastor Don Stewart has available, such as Ancient Mysteries of the Bible Solved, What Happens 1 Second After We Die, and all other titles are completely free to download. Before you go, follow James Kaddis on Instagram and Rumble. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at Calvary Chapel, Signal Hill. Countdown to Eternity is listener supported. Until next week, may the Lord bless you and keep you.